The recording. So, welcome everyone to the June Mount Diablo Audubon membership meeting. I'm Ariana Rickard. I'm the program chair and vice president for the chapter. So I think probably most of us know all the features of Zoom, but just if you need a little tour here. So on the top right, you should see something that says view. And if you click on that, you can go between speaker view, so you'll just be focusing on whoever's talking, gallery view if you want to see everybody, and full screen. And then bottom left, you're going to see a mute and a stop video. And so go ahead and keep yourself on mute. And if you want to turn your video off, that's fine too. That's saves some energy. And then you're going to see in the middle of the screen at the bottom, the chat. And so we're going to use the chat if you have any questions for our speakers or comments. And Lauren's gonna be using that later, some icebreakers. And then if you've got a reactions thing at the bottom right, if you wanna, do a thumbs up or clap or heart or whatever you want. So today we are talking about parrots. Lauren Schmaltz is our main speaker, but we're gonna start with the results of our second annual Mount Diablo Audubon photo contest. So I'm gonna turn it over to Krista Vossekuil, our education chair, and Rosalie Howarth, our social media chair. Take it away.
Hey, thank you, Ariana. And hello, everybody. It looks like our second annual Mount Diablo Audubon photo contest was very warmly received. We got more entries than we did last year. We got 133 photographs taken by 38 different photographers, and some very strong contenders emerged, as you will see. We had a couple of new categories this year, 8 categories total. And the judges provided some comments, which Krista will share with you as well on some of the photos. Our guest judges this year were Bob Lewis of wingbeats.org and of Golden Gate Audubon. He's a professional bird guide and photographer. And husband and wife team, Kitty O'Neill and Bill Pelletier from the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. They both have really active Facebook bird groups that you should check out. But all of us found the process extremely frustrating. It was so hard. The pictures were all stellar for so many different reasons. Each one was a total winner. We would get 20, 25 entries in a category and have to winnow it down to 5 finalists and 1 winner. So we did our best, but all of the submissions were just so adorable in their own way. And the first place winner in each of the 8 categories will get a gift card from Wild Birds Unlimited in Pleasant Hill. So thank you, Mike Elliott, for that. And then after we look at the photos, I'll tell you about an exciting bonus opportunity for everybody who entered this year and last. But right now, Krista is going to show us all of the finalists. So Krista, the screen is yours.
Thanks so much, Rosalie. I'm going to go ahead and share. I've put them into a PowerPoint for us. All right, well, you can see that nice and bright. I'm Krista. I'm the education chair for the Mount Diablo Audubon Society, and I'm honored to be able to show you these photos tonight. Just a little bit about the upcoming format. As Rosalie said, judges selected 3 to 5 runners-up for each category, a first runner-up and a winner. And I'll share a couple sentences, 1 to 2 per photograph that I collated from the judges. And alongside each photo, you'll find the species name, the location, and the photographer's name. So let's get going. The first category is action. And so we had 20 entries in this category, showing birds doing all sorts of things from taking off to landing to preening. So our runners up, look at this already. Our runners up include a great photo with perfect timing of a BIF, which stands for bird in flight. Gorgeous shot of a golden eagle with just so much power and grace. Below that are greater sage grouse courting, a unique action, and look at those tail feathers. And in the tree here, we have a northern saw-whet owl giving us its all. This is a tough shot of an unusual bird and very clear. Okay, our first runner-up, these are sandhill cranes captured in flight. all sharp and each with a different wing configuration. The colors are beautiful and the birds' faces are clear. And the winner of the action category is this gorgeous American bittern stalking through the reeds. Judges noted that not only is this a difficult bird to photograph, but a difficult bird to even find and see. Very well done. Thank you so much. So next up, we have our portrait category. For this category, it's always the most popular. We had 25 entries and the judges were split. So we chose 5 mentions, 1 runner-up and 1 winner. So first we'll start with these 2 stunning portraits. The first is of a Cooper's hawk taken in Danville. Judges love the cropping and composition, as well as the crispness of the feather patterns. This is equally true of the Townsend's warbler to its right. Getting a clear shot of a busy warbler is challenging, and there are usually visual blockages, including foliage. This photographer pulled it off, and the spider webs with dew give it an extra dreamy touch. Next up are 2 corvids and an ibis. Judges love these photos for their compositions, colors, and drama. From left, American crow, California scrub jay, and white-faced ibis. Our first runner-up is this lovely little burrowing owl. Judges noted the great focal point, light, eyes are bright, and the weather conditions added to the drama of this portrait. If you'll notice the ruffling of neck feathers there. Really beautiful picture. And the winner in the portrait category is brown pelican. It's almost as if the photographer and the pelican agreed on taking this photo together. The bird is looking right at the camera, the composition draws the eye up, and the colors are bright. It's a really beautiful photo and a wonderful shot. The next category we have is bird families. Last year, this category was called groups of birds and turned out to be mostly of bird families, so we went ahead and changed the name. We'll go to our runners up, which include, and you might have to come in a little closer to your screen. I'm sorry it's so small, but there's a little covey of quails all facing out in different directions. It's a really fun and engaging photo. To the right is a parent-child American dipper combo, and someone is very demanding. This is another hard to see bird, and one little detail is that the bird on the left has 1 foot up off the rock. So it's a lot to look at. And last but not least, great horned owls in nest. It's a nice level shot, very intimate and sweet. The first runner-up is a family of western grebes on a nest. The photo has nice framing and a good angle with an admiring parent. And if you look closely, there are 3 chicks and 1, maybe 2 eggs to go. And the winner, hit sharpen, take a breath, is this beautiful Western tanager chicken parent. A judge captioned it, "Beauty and the Beastlet." It's clear, crisp, the colors are vivid and beautiful, and it's a good reminder that you can't have dessert until you eat your bug. And with that terrible joke, we'll move on to the humorous section. So this category is for silly photos. Sometimes birds are funny, and they're especially funny when we anthropomorphize them. So let's do that. Our runners up include this great horned owl who looks to be singing the song of its people. That expression really is priceless. A pair of Bullock's Orioles stopped fighting in the pool. And Acosta's hummingbird looking quite perplexed. It's almost doing a reverse bird watch. Who's watching home here? This just makes me laugh. Our first runner up is a great egret doing its best impression of a cotton ball. This was taken in Martinez. Kind of like Marilyn Monroe vibes. And the winner is this great blue heron. If anyone can explain its anatomy to me, that'd be great. Judges noted that hot days call for funny body positions. I'll just let you look at that for a moment. I can't quite figure out back, front, which way it's looking. Great shot. Next is our newest category, female birds. This was inspired by a wonderful talk given here. So we'll move on to our runners up. On the left, those are greater sage grouse hens taken in Bodie, California. Bodie is kind of sort of near Mono Lake. One judge said they should sell this as a postcard for Bodie. A wild turkey. Judges really like the black and white drama and the contrast of feathers. And down below there is a little and proud Western bluebird. Judges really liked her stance and the background contrast. It's a really clear shot. So our first runner up is this lovely little vermilion flycatcher. Gray and pink on gray and pink, very soft background and soft bird. And one of the judges really liked the scale of the bird in the photograph as well. So nice composition. And the winner of the female birds category is this bush tit. Judges just flipped for this photo. Fun fact, female bush tits are known to have light irises, as this one does. They're also very busy and small birds, so this is a difficult shot to get, and the colors are really stunning. We have another new category, birds dining. We had a lot of birds eating things in last year's action category, so we splintered it off into its own, and the submissions were truly, truly great. This is one of my favorites. So our runners up include a song sparrow at Hawk Hill eating a ladybug, so that's your top left. This takes great timing, talent, and luck to get the ladybug and the bird's tongue visible in the photo. It was taken mid-swallow, really great. I didn't know they ate ladybugs, so. And Anna's hummingbird sipping, great focus, beautiful colors, and the textures are quite lovely. Also a really well done job freezing the hummingbird. And also a brown thrasher thrashing what appears to be a wasp. This is a hard to spot bird, and the light really picks up and plays on the color patterns in the bird's feathers. It's really interesting. Thank you for that. Our first runner up is this beautiful shot of a black oyster catcher demonstrating in part why it has its name. The water droplets add to the close in crop, and it's tough to get really close to these birds, especially feeding, and it's just very simple and gorgeous. And our winner in the birds dining is pretty dramatic. So this bird is literally biting off more than it can chew. It's a double-crested cormorant eating a fish at Heather Farm. The action and the colors are breathtaking, even if you notice kind of the algae on the bird's tail. So again, great focus, dramatic lighting. It's a really great moment in time captured. The judges were excited and unanimous on this one. The fish was not. So on to our youth category. We're thankful to the young people who contributed. Thank you so much. I saw some of you join the call. There's so much talent and interest in birds, and it's really inspiring. So again, thank you. We have 4 mentions, a runner-up, and a winner. So the first is Wood Duck in Clear Lake by Ellie. Judges like the reflection in the water, that the duck's mouth is open, and the movement and light, and they called it a really fun shot. Next is Anna's Hummingbird Feeding by Stacia. Beautiful colors, and the shot freezes the hummingbird well, and those purples are really, really beautiful. Next are this great blue heron family taken by Parham. It's a nice family group, really lovely colors and focus, and the more you look, the more you see. And we also have a White-tailed Kite by Alex. Excellent portrait with a clean background, which adds a lot of drama. Very crisp focus, well done. Takes us to our first runner-up, which is Peregrine Falcon in Flight by Parham. The photo looks really powerful, is crisp, and captures detail on a very fast bird. And the winner of the youth category is Portrait of Anna's Hummingbird by Anna. It's a clear shot with great lighting and composition, nice lines, very well done. Okay, we have saved the worst for last. We asked for your worst bird shots and bloopers. One of our judges exclaimed, "I hate this category," because it was tough to judge the worst, but they did it, and we're thankful. Just one more moment to thank Bob Lewis, Rosalie Howarth, Kitty O'Neill, and Bill Pelletier for their time and contributions to judging. It's a tough job with so much talent. So we'll go on to the runners-up. The runners-up are a bush tit whose tail is in focus, and that's about it. A chaotic and blurry photo of a Canada goose family, and a he, because the toe isn't pictured. Got it? Toe, he. The next worst shot is classic ruby crowned kinglet, barely identifiable as such. Well done, Maren. And the winner in this category, which is first place but also worst place, a white-winged scoter. Well, very clear, crisp, water droplets in focus, great shot of some wing feathers and rump. So thank you so much. That's it. Thank you so much for everybody who participated, for being interested in bird photography, for being interested in birds. If you have any questions, please reach out to anybody. We'd be happy to discuss with you, but most of all, thank you to the photographers. So turn it back over to Rosalie.
Well, thank you, Krista. That was great commentary. Who knew that you were actually a comedian? And a ton of work went into that PowerPoint too. We are so grateful for your PowerPoint prowess. And congratulations to all our winners and all of our finalists, and everybody. You can see the photos again, maybe spend a little more time with them in a special edition of the Quail that will come out in early July, thanks to Mark. Also, the photos will be on the website in a few days or a week or so in the gallery. And then this whole program is being recorded tonight, so we'll post the whole thing on Facebook in a day or two. Also, everybody who entered last year and this year, all of the entries will be included in a reel that's going to serve to inspire local artists in a bird art exhibit called Dare to Fly. The artist will choose a photo and then interpret it in any medium, and then the two will hang side by side in an outdoor art exhibit, all framed and labeled and credited, of course. This is going to take place at the Veranda, that kind of ritzy, newish shopping center just north of the Willows off 680. And it'll start Sunday, September 12th. And everybody will be invited to the opening day event and reception. And if you're an artist yourself and you'd like to enter some of your own bird artwork for sale, you can do that through madeinconcord.com, madeinconcord.com. So more on that later in the summer. Meanwhile, thanks to everybody who took the time to capture that amazing shot or winnow through all those albums to get the perfect entry for this year's contest. And we're greatly looking forward to what you come up with for next year's affair. So back to you, Ariana.
Thanks, Rosalie. So now we're going to do board announcements, and maybe I'll pitch it back to you, Rosalie, to do your board announcement.
Okay, the election results. We do have the election results for the board officers. We had great voter turnout. Well over 100 people voted. And I'm very pleased to say that it was unanimously in support of our proposed slate of candidates. So congratulations to our officers for 2021 to 2022. Jerry Britton, President, Ariana Rickard, Vice President, Steve Boofy, Treasurer, and Carol Paschal, Secretary. And you know what? We got to thank you guys for your continued service. I'll tell you, it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of discussions, it's a lot of emails, it's a lot of writing. So we're very grateful to our board officers and our entire board. And if anybody attending tonight has any questions or comments or would like to get involved in any aspect of the chapter's activities as we hope to be gearing back up in September, we'd love to hear from you. Just email me through the Contact Us button on the website and I'll get your query to the right person. Okay.
Thanks, Rosalie. Okay, next up we have Hugh Harvey to talk about field trips.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? It's kind of hard to follow up on photo contest there and the Queen of Comedy too. So it turns out I actually have 3 announcements. I wanted to have a field trip planning meeting on July 15, but I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks, and so please don't contact me until after the 4th of July weekend. And by that time, we should probably have more details on how we're going to do this meeting. So I'm especially talking to Ted and Beth and Linda and Alan and anybody else who may want to lead a field trip for us. We might have a somewhat less than robust schedule, I guess I should say. We've lost a few field trip leaders through attrition or moving away. And so we're going to be working on that. The second thing I want to do is just put out a little reminder that our chapter does sponsor a website called East Bay Birds for reporting birds that you see in the East Bay. There are other websites all around the Bay: Peninsula Birds, San Francisco Birds, North Bay Birds, Central Valley, South Bay. But we do sponsor East Bay Birds, and it would be really great if we could continue to report our bird sightings on that website. And finally, you'll see that I'm wearing my Peregrine Falcon team shirt tonight. I don't wear it very often. But I would want to say that 31 years ago, people worked really, really hard to reintroduce peregrine falcons to Mount Diablo. Within the last month, the Santa Cruz Predatory Bird Research Group has banded 7 chicks on Mount Diablo. 7 peregrine falcon chicks within the last month. It's an amazing story. A lot of it, the peregrine team has been working hard to keep people off of one area and trying to educate the public on the importance of staying out of there. So that's all I need to say. thank you very much for everybody who wants to lead a field trip, for all of those who send in those great photographs, for people who report their birds, and for the peregrine team. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Hugh. That's a super exciting update about the peregrines in Mount Diablo. So thank you to the Pine Canyon team that's monitoring those peregrines and making sure that they can nest and live peacefully without disruption. Okay, we have 5 minutes, so let's do some sightings. So you can either put them in the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand, and we just need the name of the bird, the location, and the date. Anyone have any exciting sightings to share? Linda.
2 golden eagles on Sherman Island.
Paul.
Western tanager in the back.
That's very cool. Where is Sherman Island? I feel like I probably should know.
Right off the Antioch Bridge in the Delta.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay, Alan, you got something?
Yeah, we had 2 bald eagles over at the Kings Canyon Loop Trail up at Valley Vista about the middle of May. So
Oh, man.
went back yesterday, but we didn't see them. Oh well.
One-time show. Hugh, what do you got?
Well, I went this past weekend, over the holiday weekend, I went into San Francisco. I guess it was Monday morning. Not too early, and there wasn't a lot of traffic because of the holiday. And I went to Land's End for the 3rd time, and I watched the parakeet auklet, which has been there for 6 or 7 years now in the summer, all the way from Alaska. I watched it as long as I wanted. It was
Nice.
pretty amazing sighting. This is a bird that's about the size of a robin, except it's a little chunkier and has a shorter tail, so that body size, it's a little chunkier than a robin, but it's 9 to 10 inches. Pretty
Wow.
amazing. It's just right here.
Nice. Jerry, you got something?
Yeah, I'm just the messenger here, but on eBird yesterday, Srikant Char reported 2 lesser nighthawks out at Clifton Court Forebay. If you stop and look on the road that goes past the marina on your way out to the water and look at about 7:30 to 8 o'clock at night, you might be able to see them. I'm going to go out in the next few days and try to spot them, but that's about the only reliable place to see those birds at this time. It is right out there during the summer months at that time, right at the evening at dusk.
Very cool, Jerry. And then in the chat, we've got from Steve Boofy, Bell's Sparrow on Juniper Trail today. And Rosalie said there was a huge colony of yellow-headed blackbirds at Klamath Lake. Ooh, first time seeing them. You got some lifers there, huh, Rosalie? Cool. All right. Any other sightings people want to share? Okay. Oh, sure, Cassie.
In Rossmore at Gateway parking lot, there's a big nest with a red-shouldered hawk and 1 chick, white fuzzy chick.
Oh, so
Very cute.
cute.
I mean, there's many people going by, doesn't seem to bother them. It's exciting to see it so close.
Nice. And Alan?
I've got one more after the nighthawks. We just got back from Horton Creek Campground near Bishop, and the common nighthawks showed up when we were there, and they were just wheeling all around us, right over our campsite. It's a great place to see common nighthawks. We've seen them there several times. And then we had Bell's or sagebrush sparrow, trying to figure out bells versus sagebrush, and over there it's kind of difficult. And black-throated sparrow, a bunch of other desert birds. So that was, since we went away from our local, had to say the nighthawks.
Yeah, well, sometimes you got to do that. See some new species. Very, very nice. Okay, and then Rosalie also has a California towhee nesting in her, in the sweet peas at the community gardens in Walnut Creek at Heather Farm, I assume. And Julia Starr says, not as excited as peregrines, but 5 bluebird families at Valley Vista for the first time. Wow, 4 before in the past 6 years. It's very exciting. Okay, so I think that's everybody. So now we're going to move on to our main program. I'm thrilled to welcome Lauren Schmaltz. She's going to talk to us about why save parrots. So just a little bit about Lauren. She's not a local person, but that's the benefits of Zoom, that we can invite people that don't live near to talk to us about their specialties. So she completed a dual bachelor degree in biology and Spanish. She also has a master's in environmental studies. She spent several years living overseas in the Galapagos Islands, Costa Rica, and Bonaire. Galapagos Islands is special to me. That's where my husband proposed. So it's very cool that you spent time there. She first became involved with the World Parrot Trust while serving as the director of ECHO, a small nonprofit that's working to protect the yellow-shouldered Amazon parrot in the fragile dry forest habitat of the Dutch Caribbean island of Bonaire. And she joined World Parrot Trust in 2017. So welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. And I will go ahead and try to share my screen now. Okay, so hopefully that is working.
It's working, we can see it.
Great, okay. So thanks to everyone and the board in particular for inviting me to give this talk tonight, and for all of you to attend. I really appreciate the opportunity. So I'm the administrator of the US branch of the World Parrot Trust, and we have 2 other branches in the UK and Canada. Our mission is to help parrots survive in the wild and also to flourish in companion care. So I thought maybe I'd start with a couple icebreakers, because typically I speak to audiences of companion bird owners and parrot enthusiasts, and you guys are more of a birding enthusiast and a birding group. So I thought I'd ask you, I heard that there's some life listers out there. How many different parrot species are on your life lists? And if you want to just kind of leave your numbers in the chat, then we can see that there. And for some reason, I'm trying to find where I can see the chat. There we go. Okay. And then the second question is, what's the furthest you've traveled and seen a parrot? I was going to initially ask you, how far have you traveled to see a parrot? But I thought maybe an incidental sighting will count that as well. So not necessarily your distance, but if you can list some countries you've been to where you've seen parrot species, or even if it's just been feral parrots, I know that they can be seen in California. So share those with me. And finally, I know that there's at least 1 or 2 of you on the call tonight who have parrots in the home. If you care to share that as well, I'm curious to hear. And if you're open to telling us what kind of parrots those are, then that would be really great.
How many parrots?
Life list.
No. 3.
5.
3 or 5, that's good. Any other responses?
Well, the furthest was Australia.
Yeah.
That's good. And which parrots were seen there? Okay, so some folks have gone into Costa Rica and seen parrots there. Looks like South Africa, that's pretty far, with an African gray, so that's pretty awesome. We'll talk about those for sure tonight. The ring-necked are in India, so that's the appropriate place to see them. You'll also find them in other parts of the world where they're not. They're actually becoming invasive species. The wild parrot flax in parts of California. I'm excited to come over to your coast next month and hopefully get to see some of those myself. Awesome. So in Australia and 5 different species. Okay, wonderful. Well, good. So some more responses. Kakapo, that's awesome. Super exciting there. We'll also touch on them briefly tonight. Some more escaped parakeets in San Francisco. And a blue-fronted Amazon in the home. So yay, we'll talk about blue-fronted Amazons in the wild, but we'll also talk about how we care for them in the home. I'm going to let the answers keep rolling in and then just keep going, because I know that we're trying to stick to 50 minutes. So tonight, what I'll talk about in the beginning is just a brief history about parrots. And then we'll dive into what exactly the World Parrot Trust does to help parrots around the world. So as birders, I know you'll appreciate that the way we can tell birds apart and identify them is looking at their physical features and identifying characteristics. So parrots are pretty cool because they have two unique features which separate them and distinguish them from all other birds. And it's the fact that they have both of these features in combination that makes them exceptional and unique. So they have beaks similar to birds of prey, where they're short and curved and incredibly forceful, so they can crack even the hardest of nuts. Those beaks also allow them to manipulate objects, and they can use their tongues and their beaks for climbing and manipulating things. And the upper jaw is not fused to the rest of the beak, which allows it to be mobile, and that's what allows them to have some dexterity with their beak. And secondarily, they have the unique feet, so the zygodactyl arrangement with 2 toes pointing forward and 2 toes pointing backwards. And that allows them to grasp things, manipulate things, and gives them, again, a remarkable dexterity. So woodpeckers, you'll also see, would have this zygodactyl arrangement, but they don't have the unique beak of the parrot. So parrots, because of the zygodactyl feet and the strong beaks, they can use tools, and they're highly adaptable. This is why we need a lot of enrichment for the people who have parrots in the home. They know that they just are constantly destroying everything you put in there with them, because they just like to manipulate things and fool with things and kind of try to solve problems. They're highly intelligent, so this is why they're also just very active, very curious birds. They have complex social structures because of that intelligence. And part of what makes them so alluring and appealing to people is that their intelligence allows them to mimic and to understand and form strong bonds, even with human companions. So with that in mind, let's talk about parrots and their interactions and involvement with people. I got ahead of myself. So some more features about parrots is that they tend to mate for life. They'll form long-term bonds. They produce fewer offspring, which require longer-term care. And many of them do have high levels of faithfulness and fidelity to a solitary mate. They're long-lived. Some of the larger species can live up to 100 years. They have delayed maturity. And these are things that, when there are external pressures on wild populations, are going to cause those populations to suffer more than perhaps other bird types in rebounding because of these characteristics about parrots. So they're highly diverse. I mean, they're very colorful. They range in size. They range in where they're found. They range in their physical attributes and coloration. And where do they live? Well, the rainforest, tropical islands, desert, snow-capped mountains, temperate forests, coastal areas, high elevations, or all of the above. And in fact, it is all of the above. I mean, even in snow-capped mountains, which I think for many of us can be hard to believe. But if you look at their range across the world, they're found in all subtropical and tropical continents. So the earliest fossil record of a parrot was during the tropical Eocene era in Europe. More recently, parrots established themselves in Australasia and South America. And you'll see on this map from BirdLife that that's where the richness of species is also the greatest. So all these fascinating attributes of parrots and their intelligence and their color is what makes them so attractive to have in the home. And in fact, they've shared homes of humans for thousands of years. There's references by Pliny the Elder of how to train a parrot to talk. So this is not a new relationship that we've formed with parrots, but because of the demand for parrots and the interest in having parrots, and in some parts of the world, the elite status that having a parrot can bring, it of course puts pressure on wild populations. All pet parrots originated from wild birds. And I think about that fact and I'm like, well, you could probably say that about just about anything, but particularly with parrots, it's more recent lifetime than something like a domesticated cat or dog, for example. So most of those have been in captivity for only a few generations, again, bearing in mind that these are long-lived species. The budgies and the cockatiels that Karen has in her home are an exception. Those have definitely been bred in captivity for much longer and have, become domesticated with time much earlier than other species. Over 100 species are being kept in captivity. And in the 80s and 90s in particular, there was a very high demand for birds, resulting in millions of them being imported into places like the US and Europe from the wild. And those pressures for trade for pet parrots caused a lot of populations to collapse. Nowadays, thankfully, the European Union has put a ban on the import of wild birds, as has the US. So most nowadays that you'll find are captive bred, and the World Parrot Trust does support responsible agriculture of parrots for companion birds. So those demands, trade is certainly one of the most significant threats against parrots in the wild. Thankfully, it's less of a pressure for parts of the world, but in developing parts of the world, there's still that high demand for parrots, and they are still being sourced both legally and illegally from the wild to meet that demand. So trade is still certainly a strong factor in why these birds are the most threatened of all birds. There's nearly 30% under threat, according to the IUCN, with even more nearing threat. And of just 400 species, that creates a significant proportion of all parrot types. The other threats that we'll look into tonight are habitat destruction, hunting and persecution, and introduced species. So beginning with bird trade, some of these images are quite graphic, and I apologize in advance, but I try to balance them with the more positive and inspiring, hopeful images and videos later. So for bird trade, unfortunately, when you have to follow the chain of activities from the point of origin of where the bird is caught to its final destination. And in some cases that can result in 40 to 70% mortality. So at the point of where the birds are caught, we're looking at really inhumane practices for catching those birds. Now, this is like improperly placed mist netting. Of course, mist netting can be done really well and effectively for research purposes, but this bird, the way it's caught up in this net, is going to possibly lose toes, have damage to feathers, which are going to require a long time to regrow, or it could suffocate if it was left too long in that net. Glue traps are another common method for trapping some birds with a decoy parrot to lure a live bird in, and there's other methods which are just not humane. From then, oftentimes the birds are cramped into very poor conditions and in high densities, and sometimes mixed with other species of birds or other types of birds, which can allow for disease transmission. Lack of access to food and water, cramped conditions when they're in their transport crates, and sometimes being subjected to high temperatures. All of these are factors during the transportation process, which can lead to additional deaths of wild-caught birds prior to them reaching their final destination, the buyer of that bird. Habitat destruction is probably the second most significant cause of populations declining among wild parrots. Here is an image of the Mopani woodland in Zambia, where the Lillian's lovebird has been found to be highly dependent on mature stands of Mopani woodland for roosting and nesting. What's happening here is logging for timber and agriculture, and then burning of wood for charcoal production, which is a source of income for impoverished communities. Hunting and persecution, this is an example from Bonaire. Thankfully, this is many years old at this point, but these are the yellow-shouldered Amazon parrots. In places where agriculture has replaced natural habitat, parrots are smart and adaptable, and so they realize quite quickly that crops are a ready and available and easy to access food source, and this can of course lead to conflict with the growers. So here these birds have been shot because they were preying on sorghum fields. In the island of Aruba, this has led to the extirpation of yellow-shouldered Amazons on that island. This is something World Parrot Trust is, with time, hoping to address and be able to find ways to reintroduce the yellow-shouldereds to that island. Thankfully, on Bonaire, it's not as much of an issue anymore, although in other parts of the world, we're dealing with other species of parrot where hunting and persecution do remain a threat. And finally, introduced species. So what we're looking at here is an artificial nest box for the great green macaws in Costa Rica. And this nest box has been completely taken over by Africanized honeybees. We see this in a number of different places, on Bonaire in Puerto Rico, and with the Lear's macaws in Brazil, just to name a few, where Africanized honeybees particularly are finding nest cavities or artificial nest boxes to be equally suitable for their purposes as what the parrots need. And they'll either move in prior to the breeding season and make those cavities unable to be occupied by the parrots, or if a parrot already is established and a colony of honeybees swarms and wants to occupy that cavity, we have seen instances of them either driving females out who are sitting on eggs, causing those eggs to be lost, or even unfortunately in some cases they'll sting the chicks to death, which with a critically endangered species like the great green macaw, every chick you're able to have produced, you want to be able to see succeed to help the population recover. Other examples of introduced species causing problems for parrots include the swift gliders, where they are preying upon the swift parrots, sugar gliders, preying upon swift parrots and causing an imbalance in the sex ratios between the males and the females. So this is a market in Santa Cruz where these macaws have been confiscated from illegal trade in a market in Santa Cruz in Bolivia. And, it leads us to ask the question of, okay, well, what can we do? And that is what the World Parrot Trust is here to address. So we were founded in 1989 in Cornwall, England by Mike Reynolds, who established Paradise Park and quickly came to realize, which is a kind of a bird park and nature zoo. He quickly came to realize back then that wild parrot populations were being decimated due to trade, and that something needed to be done to confront what was affecting populations in the wild. And so he established World Parrot Trust. And in 1994, the US 501c3 was established to kind of expand our efforts and our outreach and impact. We now have 3 branches, as I mentioned, the UK, Canada, and the US, as well as other affiliates around the world. So our kind of motto is that what's best for the birds is going to guide everything we do. And Mike Reynolds was quoted as saying that if we save the parrots, we might yet save ourselves. So a lot of the issues that we're confronting, which affect parrots in the wild, are, of course, if we can address them meaningfully and cause long-lasting impacts that are positive, then they'll benefit all of us. And we'll kind of get into some examples of that here in just a minute. So our work is kind of 5-pronged, if you will. We focus efforts in research and conservation, stopping wildlife trade, habitat protection and restoration, education and awareness, and welfare. And so as you'll see, there's a correlation between identifying the threats against wild parrot populations and identifying what activities we can do to address those threats. When we work, we try hard to partner with in-country organizations, entities, governments, local governments and national governments, researchers on the ground, and any other communities, anyone we can engage on the ground to kind of maximize our impact and ensure longevity of our efforts. To date, we've worked in 43 countries and aided 80 different species of parrots. So I kind of always think that research comes first. Generally, parrots are still not well understood or well researched in the wild, and this is because many of them can be very difficult to find. They can live in pretty difficult to access habitats, or in some places they live in geopolitically challenging locations. And sometimes, of course, with nonprofits, funding can be insecure from one year to the next. So you may have a great partner that you can support, but may not be able to sustain that support year over year, or a scientist, finishes their their study and publishes their paper and moves on, and whatever work has been done kind of stays put. So we try to find places where we can work with trusted partners on the ground and provide year-over-year support where it's necessary. So some examples of the research that we've needed to do to look into the general ecology of parrot species, or to understand their wild diets or their habits, so their social and breeding behaviors and their habitat requirements, is I'm going to give you some photo examples on the next couple slides. The top left here that we're looking at, and hopefully you can see there's a female right here. This is a Timna parrot with 3 chicks in a nest cavity. This was in Guinea-Bissau in 2014, and this was the first recorded sighting and photographic, and later you'll see video evidence of breeding behavior of Timna parrots in the wild. And this was, I think I said 2014. On the top right, this is a relatively recent work that we're getting into, where we're supporting a PhD student, Sasha Deuker, in kind of developing a lovebird action plan and research kind of agenda for the 9 species of lovebirds found in Africa. And this is the black-faced lovebird. Right now, this his most recent field trip was to collect genetic samples from black-faced lovebirds to try to understand the dynamics of the populations there, and also to compare those to samples in captivity, because sometimes there's going to be subspecies and there's going to be a geographic kind of differentiations of subpopulations and genetic differentiations of those subpopulations. And so when we're managing collections in captivity in zoos, then we want to make sure that we're also being true to those genetic differences, particularly if you're looking at potentially breeding those birds for later reintroduction into their original range states. And there's a lot more work to be done with lovebirds and the other types of lovebirds, which Sasha is also working on. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a green-winged macaw and a hyacinth kind of just taking a mud bath. It would look like they're drinking water and absorbing minerals. And this was in Bolivia. And then in the lower left-hand corner is yellow-shouldered Amazons in Bonaire feeding from a calabash fruit, which is a pretty popular wild fruit for them to forage from. More examples of the research that we want to do, again, looking at the Timna parrots in the top left corner. These are still from Guinea-Bissau. Another thing that they were looking at in addition to the breeding behavior was also the feeding behavior, and they found that they either through secondary observations like interviews with local community members or direct observations of the researchers in the field at the time, found that they ate from 30 different plant types. And in fact, they had multiple separate accounts, independent accounts of people reporting that they'd seen the Timnas feeding on sap, which was a very unique finding. It wasn't able to be corroborated by our researchers at the time, but this is an example of how we're constantly discovering new things about parrots and need to spend more time in the field observing them to be able to better understand those behaviors and what might need to be done to support that. These days, a lot of the work in Africa was understandably put on hold due to the pandemic, but right now we're working in Sierra Leone to monitor populations of Guinea-Bissau of Timna parrots there. And what they've interestingly found is that while you'd expect the Timnas to be occupying canopy forest, they're in fact finding them more distributed throughout the mangroves, and there's an assumed kind of pressure for them to have moved into that perhaps less desirable habitat for roosting and nesting because of the lack of access and adequate resources in the canopy forest. And that's something they're investigating further at this time. In the middle of your screen is the yellow-naped Amazon. So we're supporting work by Tim Wright at New Mexico State University to do a couple different things, which is first of all, they're again collecting genetic samples of wild and captive yellow-naped Amazons to compare those and better understand the distribution of the yellow-naped Amazon across the Mesoamerican area. And they've recently established the Mesoamerican Census Network. So if any of you are traveling to Costa Rica or Nicaragua or Mexico, and you want to do some yellow-naped monitoring and contribute sightings, particularly roosting information, to that network, I'm sure they'd be happy to receive that information. Sadly, what they've been discovering is that of the roost sites which were thoroughly monitored between 2005 and 2016, as many as 54% of them have declined or disappeared altogether. So the yellow-naped is currently listed as endangered, but Tim Wright's group is actually pushing for them to be considered as critically endangered just because the populations seem to be dramatically declining. Primarily the threat there, they believe, is habitat and trade, habitat loss and trade as well. Just because while they're a protected species, the enforcement of those laws is quite inadequate. And that's an unfortunate reality we find in a lot of places where we work. And we'll get into that in a little while. On the right-hand side are the Lillian's lovebirds. So again, looking at the Mopani woodland, this is something we needed to research, was what was their usage of the Mopani woodland? How restricted were they to that habitat type? Interestingly, they found that where there was higher amounts of disturbance by elephants, the Lillian lovebird numbers were greater, which was a striking correlation, although I don't think that it was like statistically proven, but it was certainly an observation that they made. And we're continuing work with the Lillians and the subpopulations across a few different countries where they're found. And then in the lower left-hand corner, these are the Lear's macaws. And as I mentioned, we're looking at, they are also affected by Africanized bees in occupying cliff faces and cavities where they nest. So we're looking at feeding restrictions due to habitat loss, as well as nesting restrictions due to competition with invasive species. And I say we, but really I'm using kind of the royal we here. World Parrot Trust facilitates and supports work of other people in the field who are actually doing the work. So this photo here, for example, is by Erica Pacifico. And this is a quick-ish video of that first sighting of breeding behavior of Timna parrots in Guinea-Bissau back in 2014. I skipped it. Here we go. You may see that the bottom portion of that nest cavity looked like it had been cut, and that's because, in fact, they had macheted into it in order to access the chicks and poach from that nest in the past. So continuing with research, we're also looking at monitoring. So for those of you who participate in backyard bird counts or the annual Christmas bird count, those are forms of monitoring. When you're providing and uploading that data to sites like eBird, you're allowing them to track migration patterns, outlying species that shouldn't be in the place where they're identified and things like that. And so these are all photographic examples of where we're supporting research and monitoring in the field. So the top banner photo is a flock of African greys returning to roost in Nigeria. And in the lower left-hand corner is again on Bonaire, so preparing for a simultaneous annual roost count on Bonaire of the yellow-shouldered Amazon parrots. And then in the lower right-hand corner, this is a group of rangers and members of our in-country partner, Parrots Conservation Bolivia, preparing for the red-fronted macaw census. So a full population census of red-fronted macaws was planned last year, but put on hold, and we're hoping to be able to execute it and complete it this year. And that has not been done since 2011, 2012. So it'll be really interesting to see what their findings are in terms of the distribution of roosts and the numbers of parrots found at roosts since that many years ago, since nearly 10 years ago. For echo, we've been doing these annual roost counts for about 20 years, continuously for the last 15, so annually for the last 15. And it has helped us track the trend of the yellow-shouldered Amazon population on Bonaire. And we're very happy to see that that is a population which is recovering and increasing. And from research, what we identify are the threats to different species of parrots in the places where they're found. So obviously, the threats will range from place to place and species to species, and the pressure of those threats and the combination of threats will affect what conservation actions we decide are most prudent for the species of interest. On the left-hand side, you're seeing a chick of a yellow-headed Amazon in Belize. Our partners there, Belize Bird Rescue, they work with many other partners in that area to actually remove chicks from at-risk nests where poaching has been documented and continues to occur to this day. So they remove those chicks, they hand rear them, and then they prepare them for eventual release back into the location where they were found. And that's kind of their conservation strategy for their particular situation. In other places, you know, there have been cases where we've worked with partners who have tried to rehabilitate past poachers and engage them with nest monitoring. That we did try that in Guinea-Bissau. With Bonaire and Echo, we monitor nests with camera traps, and we do that in a lot of our partners to kind of try to deter poaching from happening to begin with. For Belize, like it just, nothing will deter the poaching. So the best case scenario for those chicks is to physically remove them from the nest and allow them to get large enough to the point where they're no longer at risk for being poached. In the top right corner, what you're seeing is a ranger from the Gran Mojos Municipal Protected Area, which World Parrot Trust helped establish in 2017 in the Beni of Bolivia, where 35% of the known population of blue-throated macaws occurs and 50% of the breeding population occurs. And these are nest boxes with which the Gran Mojos Municipal Park rangers have installed to help boost that wild population and provide more nesting cavities and nesting opportunities for that critically endangered species. In the lower right-hand corner is the Puerto Rican Amazon. So the World Parrot Trust provides technical, financial, and equipment support to the Department of Natural Resources on Puerto Rico to help with the Puerto Rican Amazon project. You'll see that these birds are collared and tracked, but we also support them with intensive nest monitoring, artificial nests, and they are doing captive breeding for release. Some other conservation actions, sometimes the conservation actions that feel most appropriate are very individualized. So in the top left corner is a conure at ASM Cambaquara in Brazil, where the chick was found to have splayed feet, which needed splinting in order to allow it to be able to move and have the dexterity it needed to survive. In those cases, it's the partner on the ground who's taking their time, dedicating the resources, the time, the effort to kind of maximizing every individual outcome for success. And what World Parrot Trust's role in that situation is to provide the technical and medical support. So we have a Brazil program manager, Andre Seidenberg, who is not only an avian vet, but a PhD. And he works very closely with ASM Cambaquara to give them medical advice on how to treat individual cases of birds which come in. The result of which is that they have great success with bringing back birds that you just think don't have a shot to survive, and just really heartwarming stories come out of there. And every one of those is a conservation success, even if the species isn't necessarily of concern globally. On the upper right-hand corner, these are scarlet macaws. Again, talking about some species aren't necessarily considered, IUCN threatened, but they can be locally or regionally important. So the scarlet macaw is Honduras' national bird. They are not found in many of the areas within Honduras that they historically were found. They are also culturally important for the Mayan civilization and current Mayan culture. So our partners at Macaw Mountain Bird Park and their NGO Pro Alas is doing a captive breeding for release program. And actually they will be doing a release at the end of this month. So hopefully, I know you guys have contributed to their work. So I hope that you'll be able to virtually attend their Wakamaya Fest, which is happening on June 27th. And they will be doing a release of scarlet macaws at the time back into the Copan Ruinas. In the lower left-hand corner, we're seeing a camera trap in an artificial nest box of great green macaws at Ara Manzanillo in Costa Rica on the Caribbean side of the country near Gandoca. And again, with the great greens, these are critically endangered species. So providing artificial nest boxes and then providing supplementary support to released birds to ensure every individual outcome is a success is really important in this particular case. And we're happy to see that they've been steadily increasing their numbers at their location over the last 4 or 5 years since their nest box program started. And then in the lower right-hand corner, this is kind of one of the earliest and most iconic parrot success stories. The World Parrot Trust in 1990 partnered with the Durrell Wildlife Trust, the government of Mauritius, and the Mauritius Wildlife Federation to support the work of Dr. Carl Jones in bringing the echo parakeet back from just, small double digits to now over 700 individuals in the wild. And that was through a variety of direct conservation actions, including captive breeding for release, active nest management, and of course, always community engagement and education. Let me check my time. I might have to talk even faster. So this is a quick video for anybody who's scared of heights. You might not want to watch this, but this is a nice kind of day in the life of a field researcher. This is about, I want to say, 60 meters, maybe up in the air of a tree to put a camera trap on a hyacinth macaw nest in Bolivia, sorry. You can hear the parents aren't thrilled about it. So the next kind of one of the next biggest actions that World Parrot Trust has is to try to stop wildlife trade. So as I mentioned earlier, wildlife trade happens both legally and illegally on the markets. We're in a very new frontier in terms of the use of social media to support wildlife trade. And so right now we're actively supporting research into identifying those networks of illegal trade through social media and finding ways to work with social media platforms like Facebook or government authorities or airlines who are all participants either unwittingly or passively in these illegal trade networks. And so just trying to kind of dismantle the trade network one stop at a time. And there's some exciting talks and information about that, which I'd be happy to pass along to anyone who's interested. We always want to advocate for better legislation for the birds where it's appropriate. So that included us strongly supporting the move of African greys onto CITES Appendix 1 to limit their trade from the wild. And for those who may not know, Appendix 1 just basically it prevents all legal wildlife trade. There are a few countries that still permit it, but it severely reduces the amount of birds that you can take out of their origin locations. So we also want to support and encourage enforcements and confiscations. And sometimes the barrier to success there is not so much a willingness to do one's job, but the fear of the responsibility and the burden of that responsibility when a bird is confiscated and then put into a wildlife authority's care. And so oftentimes the role that we play there is just building capacity and knowledge, species identification, and very basic care. Including, very simple aviary construction to the wildlife authorities in countries where confiscations are happening to try to maximize the numbers of birds that can be rescued from illegal trade and possibly given the chance to be rehabilitated for release. That leads into rescue, rehab, and release. So anytime we learn of confiscations, we try to mobilize our resources to support whichever partner has received those confiscated birds, whether it's providing food, providing veterinary support, providing equipment, technical support, just kind of opening up our networks and doing everything we can for the best positive gains. And finally, education and awareness. Sometimes local communities are aware of trade and trapping happening in their backyards, if you will, but they're either ignorant to the fact that that is not permitted and it's illegal according to the law, or they feel kind of disempowered to do anything to stop it. And so the more we can engage local communities in making a difference for their natural resources and protecting their natural resources and having ownership of the welfare of birds in the wild, then the better outcomes there will be in the long term and the better protection there will be for populations of birds in the wild. So this is a thick-billed parrot which was rescued from the trade in Indonesia. So a lot of that work is all under our umbrella of Fly Free. So looking at some specific examples of where we've aided enforcement and confiscation, this is from 2018, where we partnered with a number of other institutions and organizations as listed on the bottom to provide some capacity building, as I said, species identification, basic care, just getting, for anyone who's been around a large parrot, or medium-bodied parrot, even for that, those beaks can be intimidating. Or if you've been around a bird of prey, so becoming comfortable with handling a bird is definitely an important first step for an enforcement officer who's at the airport looking at a shipment of birds and wondering if they're legal or illegal. What am I going to do with these birds if I tell the shipper that they can't move them? So making enforcement officers feel more empowered and capable of doing what they are committed to doing. In the top left corner, this is a release of some lorikeets, and you see a little eclectus poking his head out. This is in Indonesia. We work with a number of different wildlife authorities across Indonesia, and an important role that our Indonesia program coordinator, Med Alawate, plays there is that with the islands, you find very distinct subspecies, and so it's very important in these cases prior to doing a release that you identify down to the subspecies as to which island is the appropriate location to release that bird back onto. And so that's kind of something that we're very heavily involved in. That's beyond the basic care of getting the birds prepared for release. In the lower left-hand corner, this is from Uganda. It's a photo by Elaine Henley, and she does a parrot tour if anybody's ever interested. And you'll see that this bird is banded. So this bird has been named Mishindi, which means survivor. This was a bird which was released in 2013. Sorry, I'm not confident on my dates. But the cool fun fact is that it was part of a group of birds which was released by Jane Goodall, Madam Jane Goodall. And so it was really exciting for this tour group to recite this bird. And not only was it foraging on wild fruits and quite comfortable and adapted and healthy, but it was showing some breeding behavior with a wild bird that was unbanded. So, I mean, that's just like, yay, that's what we do this work for. Those are the outcomes we're looking for. On the right-hand side of your screen, this is a blue-fronted Amazon. I believe somebody said that they had a blue-fronted Amazon in the home. This is in Brazil. This is at a new partner of the World Parrot Trust just last year. Interestingly, in some parts of the world, we found that confiscations were on the decline because of the pandemic. But in Brazil, our program coordinator, Andre, shared with me, he felt like the police were kind of happier to stop the suspicious looking vehicles because there were so many fewer vehicles on the road. So in fact, there were about 130 birds confiscated in Brazil of blue-fronted Amazons at varying life stages. And thankfully, this new partner, Linz Ecological, took those birds, cared for them, and is facilitating releases. And so 2 groups so far have already been released back on their farm. And, those were confiscated somewhere around August of last year. So releases, for 6 or so months or more months, these birds have been in the care of a partner where they're needing to be fed and looked after and had health checks and disease screenings where appropriate, cared for in aviaries. And so there's, you know, a high cost to making sure that we can get these birds back out into the wild. Obviously, the preferable option would be to stop the illegal trapping from happening to begin with. And so, you know, just another happy video of a release. This is a release of blue and gold macaws in Bolivia in December 2019. We've also recently helped with some releases of African greys in the Democratic Republic of Congo late last year. There will be a release of, I'll share a video in a minute. I realize I'm running low on time. So the birds were released and it was very exciting. So we're also excited
Okay,
to.
Lauren, if you want to show the video, it's fine.
I have a lot more videos and a lot more slides.
Oh,
I'll
okay,
just
okay,
keep
okay.
going.
All right, okay.
Thank you, Ariana. So I, you know, when I timed it before, I guess I wasn't talking as much. So in late June, some new partners in Mexico will also be releasing surviving birds from a confiscation in Chiapas of over 300 birds. This situation is a little bit more disappointing in that they had very high mortality rates, and it wasn't necessarily a lack of resources and capabilities because they had vets treating the birds. It was just that the conditions that the birds were trapped in kept that dire, and also the birds were trapped in such extreme conditions that this is just an unfortunate consequence of trapping the wildlife. Thankfully, those that have recovered have been able to regrow their flight feathers, and as I mentioned, they'll be releasing those birds. It's about 90 surviving individuals later this month, so we're excited to see that as well. So next, we're looking at habitat and protection and restoration. I mentioned we worked with local partners in Bolivia to set aside, well, they established a municipal protected area for the blue-throated macaws. Not only are we protecting habitat, but we need to restore it. So Bonaire, one of the primary threats against the yellow-shouldered Amazon is the lack of suitable nesting and food resources. So for ECHO, our partners on Bonaire, where I used to direct the program, that's been our primary focus of recent years, is just reestablishing the dry forest and protecting it from invasive species of herbivores, which are continuing to decimate what remains of that tree diversity. I'm going to skip this. That last video was a video of, as many of you will be aware, there were rampant wildfires about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Most of us, the world's attention was drawn to those in Australia, which was just absolutely awful. But they were also occurring in throughout Brazil and Bolivia. And so other ways we can look at protecting and restoring habitat is also preventing incidents like that. So this summer, we'll be working with our local partners there to build capacity and training for fire prevention, creating fire breaks, and also how to suppress fire and restore habitat, strategically restore habitat when it's been decimated. Thankfully for the macaws in Bolivia where we work, their habitat wasn't significantly affected. There wasn't a significant loss of critical resources for them. All of these activities really can only go so far if you don't have local involvement, and educating communities about the work that you're doing on the ground is absolutely vital to the ongoing success of that work. So these are a number of different pictures from our partners of how we primarily, a lot of the work you're seeing is going to be engaging those younger generations, as you guys were talking about, you know, bringing young birders out to just grow that enthusiasm, appreciation of diversity and our biology and the natural world. So that's what we're seeing here as well. The other element of that is also providing sustainable alternative livelihoods to younger generations, so young adults who want to get into this work or have a passion for their natural environment, but not necessarily an obvious route to follow, and a reliable and secure source of income to support that passion. And so that's another important aspect, particularly, again, I can speak most directly about Echo's work, and that's definitely been the focus of Echo's work along with habitat restoration in recent years. So not only are we providing in situ, so in country where the wild populations of parrots are found, but we're raising ex situ awareness, so providing talks like this to audiences like you to just talk about our work and the importance of, well, what we think is very important about our work. That includes producing a quarterly magazine called Citizen, which members of our organization are entitled to receive. And for those of you who'd like to, there's back issues available on our website. Our website has over 1,500 pages of content. It has a very robust encyclopedia and an Ask an Expert section, as well as a reference library. So for all questions parrots, you can go there. I'm excited to announce that we are relaunching a new website in the coming months, and it's going to be a lot kind of more user-friendly and navigable. So be on the lookout for that. We also produce a monthly e-newsletter just to kind of talk about updates of our partners and interesting fun facts, companion bird care tips. And that kind of gets into the idea of welfare, which is not to be diminished or ignored. It's as important for us, while our primary focus is on wild parrots, it's as important for us that those birds who share our home are receiving adequate and optimal care so that they can enjoy those long lives that they are naturally inclined to live. And so we produce a number of resources, both online and print, and through conversations like these and events like our Parrots at Home, which is not, it's happening the last weekend of June and will coincide with the Macomb Mountains Wakavaya Fest, as well as a number of other exciting activities. So just trying to bring awareness and education to people who own parrots and probably want the best for their birds, but don't necessarily have access to all the resources and information they need to provide those environments, the stimulating, nutritionally balanced and suitable environments for their birds in the home. So I think I only ran a little bit long.
For over 30 years, the World Parrot Trust has been working to improve the lives of parrots all over the world. One key focus has been on parrot welfare, which culminated in the creation of the Kiwa Centre in 2017, when over 200 macaws were rescued from horrendous conditions at a parrot breeding site in the UK. Many had suffered health problems as a result of their neglect and needed urgent medical attention. They were given a new life at the centre, where they have been rehabilitated and can fly, forage, enjoy their enrichment and bathe in the rain. Some of these parrots have already been rehomed to zoos in the UK as ambassadors for their species, and in February 2020 we welcomed a group of grey parrots rescued from illegal trade in Bulgaria and Hungary, which we hope will one day find their way back to the wild. Parrot welfare is not only of concern for parrots in the wild or those rescued from trade, but also for the birds that share our homes.
So that was one of our kind of appeal videos from our end of year fundraising campaign last year, which was a promise to parrots. And so you may be asking yourselves, well, this is fascinating and wow, you're doing so much, and how can I get involved and how can I help? And so, I'd encourage you to join us, think about becoming a member, do what you can to learn more about parrots, peruse our website, if you will, join us on Facebook. And for those of you with parrots in the home, just keep doing what you're doing, giving them loving, stimulating environments. And definitely check out our nutrition guides, because I think there's a lot of things that you wouldn't necessarily realize that your parrot can eat or might want to eat or might be able to eat. Yeah, that's me. These are many of our partners, but not all, and supporters who help make our work possible. And I am open to questions if there's time.
What a great shot. So there were a few questions in the chat. So thank you, Lauren. That was fascinating. It's good to hear more about parrots. So is a macaw also a parrot?
Yes, it is a type of parrot, correct.
And then the Oakland Zoo currently has a campaign against illegal wildlife trade, including parrots. There's a wonderful display explaining the threats against parrots and other wildlife. I was just
That
at
is
the Oakland
awesome.
Zoo. Just at the Oakland Zoo on Saturday, and I did not see that exhibit. I'll have to look for it the next time I go.
I feel like Oakland in the past has supported some of our work. So we are in the process of trying to re-engage our zoo partners. I'll definitely have to check them out. So thanks for that tip.
Anyone have any other questions for Lauren? You can put in the chat. Okay, here we go. The Book of Parrots and People is great for anyone considering getting a parrot. And what is happening with the parrots of Telegraph Hill?
What is happening with the parrots of Telegraph Hill? I admit I don't know that much about fairly established populations of parrots, but my director would be happy to answer that question.
I imagine they're just still going strong, you know? I mean, if I'm over by the ferry building, I can like hear them all coming through and roosting on those trees right near the waterfront.
What's happening with the Spix's macaw?
They are extinct in the wild. And that's a great question. There was a recent repatriation of Spixes held in captivity. We'll see where it goes. We were not involved in that effort.
Any other questions for Lauren? All right. Well, thank you again for doing this really important work and sharing all the stuff that you're doing to save parrots. It's really exciting.
Yay. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it was really nice to speak with all of you tonight. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. So are you based on the East Coast? I can't remember.
I am. Yes.
Okay. So it's very late for you now.
That's okay. I had my late afternoon coffee to keep me going.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you, Jill. And Hugh.
Great. Well, so this is we're not gonna, as we normally do, we don't meet in the summer, so we don't have any membership meetings in July and August, and we still have not decided what we're doing in September, if we're gonna try to meet in person, but we'll keep you all posted. That's something the board is discussing. But anyway, otherwise, have a great summer, and thank you all for joining us, and we will see you in September. Bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you.